In his third year with the Brooklyn Nets, Cam Thomas stepped into a larger role and showcased all of his game. Let's break it down. What's up, everybody? My name's Lucas Kaplan, and this is Nets Film Focus, where we'll be looking at some various improvements that some Nets made last season. And for the first episode, who better to start with than everybody's favorite bucket, Cam Thomas. Now, I think it's fair to call Cam Thomas, at 6'4", a combo guard, meaning ideally he can contribute by playing with the rock in his hands or playing off of it. And in my opinion, he made strides in both of these areas last season, and we have some numbers and film to back it up. Starting off the ball, Thomas was a real weapon on the catch this season. Per Synergy Sports, Thomas scored a hair under 1.2 points per shot, whether a catch and shoot or a drive off a spot-up situation. That ranked in the 86th percentile among all NBA players, up from the 63rd percentile in his second year. It's not hard to figure out why. CT shot a blazing 43.6% on catch and shoot threes, easily a career best. And in looking at these clips, you see how this is a valuable skill set for Cam. A high elevation and release point on his jumper means that contest doesn't affect him. This one at the end of the shot clock can't bother him either, and he's hunting these shots, which is real important. On this one, he pass fakes the first defender, then shoots it over the second one. And perhaps my favorite example, he drives the lane, kicks, but relocates to the corner and splashes a three. That's just efficient, easy offense for Cam. Overall, about 10% of Thomas's field goal attempts were these catch and shoot threes last season, and that number increased to 15% in the 2024 campaign. That's not a drastic overhaul, but it does mean that Thomas was taking more of the scariest looks possible for a defense, especially coming from a shooter of his caliber. So, you'd see defenders flying at Thomas beyond the three-point arc, which allowed him to get to the rim for two, or when he blew by the first layer of defense and the secondary defenders would step up, he could drop an assist. Even though that drive and dish came from a spot-up situation, it leads us to Thomas's most significant improvement this season, and one that bodes well for his development handling the ball. The 22-year-old showed real growth in the playmaking department in his third season, and it was fun to track his progress in this area over the course of the season. Now, Cam Thomas came out of the gates throwing this lob pass consistently, and the timing and placement on many of them were just about perfect. It was the key to his playmaking growth this season, and it happened right from October. Obviously, it helps when Nic Claxton is finishing on many of these, good athlete, soft hands, but the reason it was so potent for Thomas is because it paired so well with his floater and intermediate scoring. You see drop coverage often in the NBA, exemplified here by our old friend Brook Lopez, the big man sitting far behind the level of the pick and roll. Lopez is understandably worried about Thomas's floater here and goes out to contest it from like 17 feet, but it doesn't matter, swish. So when you pair that with the ability to throw a lob, it creates a nightmare scenario for that drop defender. Coming off this screen against the Spurs' Dom Barlow, Cam gets Claxton a dunk, and let's just run it back. As soon as Barlow makes his decision, right there, rotating his body towards Thomas to take away his floater, it's an automatic lob. On target, a big dunk, and that was the key, the first step to Thomas's increased playmaking this season. Thomas's lob throwing was likely the single biggest factor in the major uptick in his pick and roll efficiency. When Thomas either shot or made a pass that directly led to a shot, the Nets scored .941 points per pick and roll per Synergy. That number ranks in the 52nd percentile for all ball handlers, a massive year-over-year improvement for Thomas after ranking in the 21st percentile in that same category last season. As such, defenses were forced to vary their coverages against Thomas as the year went on, playing more aggressively in the pick and roll, showing two defenders to the ball. Initially, this served as a speed bump for Thomas, but eventually it accelerated his growth in the playmaking department. When I say showing two defenders, I mean that instead of the big dropping back in the paint, he'll help guard Cam Thomas near the level of the screen, forming somewhat of a double team. And while this can create opportunities for other Nets, Thomas did struggle with the ball pressure that results from this coverage, here getting swarmed by two Rockets and turning it over. But Thomas's struggles with this coverage were brief. All he needed to do was see a few reps of it. By this late March game against the Wizards, he had figured it out, and the proof were these 3 plays all in the second quarter. Thomas catches this on a handoff, and he gets double teamed, but he's not even looking at them. He's looking at this third defender, a helper responsible for guarding both Brooklyn's shooter on the perimeter and tagging the roller to the basket. He makes the wrong decision, so Cam Thomas punishes it with an easy pass for a dunk. A couple plays later, that defender makes the opposite decision. Cam Thomas, easy read, hits Mikal Bridges for a wing 3. Now he's in a rhythm and knows exactly what to do. This third possession, he sees 2 defenders again, and he wants to hit this roll man. So what he'll do is look to the perimeter, sending that defender flying before throwing the lob. He's not just reacting to the defense right there, but he's moving them around with his eyes to throw the highest value pass. As you might expect, the assist numbers bear out the improvements we see on film. Thomas jumped from 3.9 assists per 100 last season to 4.4 in his 3rd year in the league. Better yet, there was a clear jump in his ability to dish the rock as the season went on. After the Nets got back from their Paris trip in mid-January, Thomas averaged 5.2 dimes per 100 possessions, despite dealing with his own injuries and Brooklyn reshuffling the roster at the trade deadline. Eventually, it wasn't about recognizing coverages and memorizing certain patterns, but just playing aggressively and making the right reads. All of these assists came in Brooklyn's penultimate game of the year in MSG against the Knicks. And you can see Thomas just weaving through multiple defenders, there's a lob, and he did a lot of this at the end of the season as well, driving deep into the paint before making a decision. This play is just awesome. High coverage in the pick and roll, between the legs keeps the dribble alive, and a last-second decision for the alley-oop. Just really impressive stuff. By the end of his 3rd year, Thomas was making all sorts of plays that, frankly, he might not have made in his first 2 years in the league. At 22 years old, he displayed growth in critical areas when it comes to evaluating the modern combo guard. He converted 3-pointers off the catch at absurd rates, turning himself into a real threat without the ball. And with it, Thomas showed an exciting ability to read defenses and find his teammates for easy looks, not even growing year to year, but week to week or game to game in the 2024 season. When you look at CT's season as a whole, these are the improvements that stand out, and these improvements do nothing but inspire optimism about his future. Stay tuned for more Nets film focused breakdowns as we look at more players and the improvements they made in this last season.